The planet Zyphora was a jewel in the outer rim, a world of sprawling violet deserts and jagged crystal formations that refracted the twin suns' light into shimmering rainbows across the horizon. Yet despite its beauty, the planet carried a reputation so dark that most interstellar travelers avoided it altogether. The story was of the exiled queen, a being known as Valira, a woman whose name alone could silence a room of hardened mercenaries. She had not always been a figure of fear. Centuries ago, Valira had ruled the crystalline city of Zirith, a bastion of trade and diplomacy. Her reign was marked by prosperity, but a civil war orchestrated by power-hungry lords had toppled her government. In the chaos, her closest allies perished, and Valira was struck with a curse that twisted her body and her presence into something unrecognizable. Legends whispered across the galaxy that approaching her brought madness, or worse, instant death. Her skin now bore faint, iridescent scales. Her eyes glowed with a luminous amber that pierced the soul, and her voice carried a resonance that made even the strongest warriors stagger. Those who survived encounters with her never returned to speak of it. Entire fleets had vanished trying to confront her, leaving nothing but empty wrecks scattered in Zyphora's orbit. This is where Cale Donovan, a human warrior from Earth, entered the story. Unlike most humans who were wary of interstellar politics, Cale had been drawn to the frontier by a desire to prove himself. He was a soldier of unmatched skill, trained in both conventional warfare and the subtler arts of negotiation, but he had never faced anything like Zyphora. Cale's ship, the Ardent Hawk, descended toward the desolate surface. His orders were simple: investigate rumors of a living relic on Zyphora. The client, a coalition of traders fearful of losing shipments, spoke in hushed tones, cautioning him that no one had ever returned from the Queen's domain. Cale, however, thrived on risks others feared. The first hours on the planet were surreal. Jagged crystal formations jutted from the sands like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Wind swept across the dunes, carrying whispers of something ancient and powerful. Every instinct Cale had screamed at him to turn back. But he pressed on, guided by sensors that detected faint life signs emanating from a fortress at the edge of a valley. The fortress was magnificent, built into a cliff of violet crystal. From a distance, it shimmered like a mirage. Cale's ship landed at the outskirts, and he approached cautiously. The closer he got, the heavier the air felt, as though the planet itself were aware of his intrusion. Then he saw her. Valira stood atop the highest spire, her figure partially obscured by swirling dust and crystal reflections. Her gaze fell upon him, and Cale felt it like a physical blow, an intensity that threatened to unravel his very thoughts. He staggered but refused to retreat. Most beings would have fallen to their knees or fled, yet Cale's human resilience anchored him. "You are fearless," Valira's voice rang out, a melodic yet haunting cadence. "Or foolish." Cale's fingers instinctively rested on his sidearm, though he knew this confrontation would not be won by weapons. "I'm neither," he said steadily. "I'm here to help." Valira tilted her head, the faint light catching on her scales, casting fractured rainbows into the air. "Help," she echoed, amused yet skeptical. "None who have tried before succeeded. Why would you be any different?" "I don't run from fear," Cale said. "I run toward it. That's what makes me human." A flicker of curiosity passed over Valira's face. Cale noticed the subtle tension in her posture, the remnants of a creature long accustomed to solitude and caution. She allowed him in trance, her fortress looming around them like a cathedral of crystal. The corridors were vast and echoing, lined with artifacts from a civilization long past. Cale felt both awe and caution. Every step he took was observed, measured, as if the very walls had memory. Hours turned into days as Kale navigated the fortress. He discovered the truth behind a curse. Valira had been poisoned with a biogenic agent, a relic from the rebellion, designed to alter her DNA and make her untouchable. Her transformation, while horrific to outsiders, had preserved her intellect, beauty, and power. Yet it also left her isolated, immune to companionship, vulnerable only to herself. Kale realized the danger was not in Valira attacking him. She had no need, but in the psychological strain of her presence. The mind games were subtle, illusions of movement in the periphery, whispers that seemed like they came from his own thoughts. He felt exhaustion creep into his limbs, doubt into his mind. And then he saw the first sign of vulnerability, a painting, worn and faded, depicting a younger Valira smiling among her people. Kale approached. "She was happy once," he murmured. Valira's voice came from behind him, soft now. "Happiness is a fragile thing, one that was taken." "I know," Kale said, "but it doesn't have to stay gone." Valira studied him for a long moment. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. A crystal guardian, a massive construct, half machine, half living crystal, emerged from the wall. Its eyes glowed red. Most would have fled, but Kale stepped forward, instinctively drawing energy from the stabilizers in his suit. The battle was brutal. Kale used every ounce of his training, dodging crystalline blades and countering with precise strikes. But the key was understanding, not strength. Kale noticed the Guardian reacted to Valira's emotions. When she flinched, it faltered. He realized that her fear had been as much a prison for her as the curse itself. Kale turned to her mid-battle. "Your fear controls them," he shouted. "Let it go." For the first time in centuries, Valira's eyes softened. She extended her hands, and the Guardian froze. Then, with a subtle motion, she dissipated it into light. Kale fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. You can't be human," she whispered, awe and disbelief mixing in her voice. "I am," Kale said, smiling weakly. "And I'm here to remind you that being human means facing the impossible, not fleeing from it." Days passed in quiet companionship. Kale and Valira shared stories of their worlds, of loss, triumph, and hope. He helped her regain confidence in herself, while she taught him secrets of Zyphora, its crystals, its energy flows, and its long-forgotten history. Word of Kale's success spread across Zyphora. Traders and warriors who had once avoided the planet began to approach cautiously. Yet Kale did not fight them off. Instead, he introduced them to Valira, not as a curse, but as a leader and a force of wisdom. Slowly, the world learned that the exiled queen was no longer a threat, but a guardian. Years later, Zyphora flourished under Valira's restored leadership, and Kale became a legend in his own right. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or inferior. They were respected as beings capable of courage, compassion, and change. In a final ceremony atop the crystal spire, Valira addressed the crowd. Kale stood beside her, the twin suns reflecting off the crystals, bathing them in gold and violet light. To those who doubted, Valira said, her voice steady and warm, "Know that fear can only control you if you let it." And to those who dared, thank you for proving that even in the darkest times, courage can change everything. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Kale only looked at Valira. "You kept your promise," he said softly. "No," she replied, smiling genuinely for the first time in centuries. "We kept our promise. You reminded me what it means to live again." The story of Kale Donovan and Valira of Zyphora became a legend told across galaxies, the tale of a human warrior who dared to approach the untouchable, who faced fear head-on, and who taught an entire world that courage and humanity could triumph even over ancient curses. And in the heart of Zyphora, the exiled queen was no longer alone. Kale and Valira stood atop the highest crystal spire, the twin suns of Zyphora casting long, glimmering shadows over the reclaimed city. The air was calm now, carrying the scent of violet sands and crystal dust. What had once been a place of fear and legend had transformed into a city of hope and possibility. For centuries, Zyphora had been isolated, feared, and abandoned. Its people, scattered across other systems after the rebellion, had all but lost hope that their queen, Valira, would ever return to lead them. But now, under her guidance and with Kale by her side, the city pulsed with life once more. Traders arrived with goods, scholars with knowledge, and engineers with designs to harness the planet's unique crystalline energy. Valira turned to Kale, her luminous amber eyes reflecting the horizon. "You've done more than save me," she said quietly. "You've reminded an entire world that fear does not have to be the master." Kale smiled, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The battles, the nights spent navigating illusions, the quiet moments of understanding. "You were never the enemy," he said. "You were the victim of fear, like everyone else. I just helped you see it differently." She stepped closer, her scales catching the sunlight in soft rainbow hues. For the first time, she did not radiate danger, but serenity. The transformation was not merely physical, it was emotional, spiritual. The curse that had made her untouchable now seemed like a distant memory, broken not by technology or force, but by trust, courage, and human determination. The citizens of Zirith gathered below, marveling at the sight. Where once they had whispered her name in dread, now they cheered it. The exiled queen, once untouchable and feared, descended to meet them. Kale followed, standing at her side. The crowd fell silent as Valira raised her hands, not in authority, but in welcome. "My people," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "For centuries, I was absent. Not because I wished it, but because fear made it so. Today, that fear is broken. Thanks to courage and humanity, we reclaim our place among the stars." The city erupted in applause. Children ran through the crystal streets, scholars began planning academies, and the traders started setting up permanent trade hubs. The world of Zyphora had been reborn. Kale felt a hand brush against his arm. Valira looked at him with gratitude and something deeper, respect, admiration, and perhaps even affection. "You changed everything," she whispered. "And you reminded me why humans fight," Kale replied. "We fight for more than survival. We fight for hope." Weeks later, Kale and Valira convened the first council of Zyphora, bringing together representatives of scattered clans, traders, and scholars. Together, they forged a new governance system that honored both the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future. Valira no longer ruled alone. Kale remained by her side as a human advisor and ambassador, a symbol of the cooperation that had restored her world. In the quiet moments, Kale would wander the crystal plains, reflecting on how a single act of courage had changed the trajectory of an entire civilization. Valira often joined him, no longer distant or fearsome, but as a partner, both in leadership and in life. They shared stories, laughter, and moments of quiet awe, knowing that they had overcome not just external enemies, but the internal ones: fear, isolation, and doubt. Years passed. Zyphora became a beacon in the Outer Rim, a hub of knowledge, culture, and trade. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or inferior. Kale's deeds had shown that courage, empathy, and perseverance could overcome even the most terrifying legends. And Valira, once the feared exiled queen, became known as the luminary of Zyphora, a ruler whose wisdom and bravery inspired entire civilizations. One evening, as the twin suns set and the crystalline spires shimmered in the fading light, Kale and Valira stood together at the edge of a cliff overlooking the city. The wind carried the faint echoes of the past, the whispers of fear, the shadows of old legends, but now they were just that, echoes. Valira turned to Kale, her eyes soft, unafraid. "Do you ever regret coming here?" she asked. Kale shook his head. "Never. Every step, every risk, it led to this.
To you, to them,
to hope." She smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and extended her hand. "Then stay with me, Kale. Not as a warrior, not as a hero, but as a companion. There's still so much to build together." Kale took her hand. For the first time in centuries, Zyphora's people and their queen felt safe, complete, and unbroken. And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the city in hues of violet and gold, Kale knew that their story, the story of a human who dared when no one else would, and a queen who learned to trust again, would echo across galaxies for generations to come. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to stand where everyone else fears to go to change the fate of an entire world.